For centuries, Russia and Iran were rivals. They were constantly competing for power and influence all across Eurasia. But in geopolitics, things can change fast. The enemy of your enemy can become your friend. And today, we're going to dig into how these two old adversaries are building a powerful new alliance, and of course, what that means for the rest of the world.
So, what gives? Why are these two nations with a long history of conflict suddenly teaming up? And really, the big question for a lot of people is, what does this new access mean for the strategic interests of the West? Let's unpack what's really driving this massive geopolitical shift. All right, so the first piece of this puzzle isn't in some capital city, but on the shores of the Caspian Sea. There was a recent summit here that really set the stage for this whole thing. It was a key moment where their shared interests started to become a real solid partnership. Now, this was not just another diplomatic meeting with a few handshakes and photos. No way. The sources we've been looking at frame this summit as a truly decisive moment. They call it a triumph for Iran and a victory for Russia. This is where their mutual interests really locked in, creating a powerful new bloc with some major implications, starting with energy. And that leads us right into the first major pillar of this alliance, the energy game. Because deep under the Caspian Sea, there are these huge reserves of natural gas, and that gas has become a central piece in a very high-stakes geopolitical chess match. For the West, this is where the strategic risk starts to get very, very real.
See, for years, Europe has been looking at Caspian gas as its golden ticket to energy security. The plan was pretty simple. Build new pipelines, get gas from places like Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan, and finally break free from being so heavily dependent on Russia. But this new Russo-Iranian partnership, it throws a massive wrench in those plans. They've basically created a cartel to control the region's energy flow. It really is all about strategic leverage. Russia already controls most of the existing pipelines. Now, by teaming up with Iran, they have a shared interest in managing the flow and, importantly, the price of all that Caspian energy. Together, they can pretty much block or delay any new pipelines, which keeps Europe stuck, dependent on their terms. It's a classic power play. And the pipelines? Well, they're the weapon.
But this partnership goes way beyond just energy politics. So now let's talk about the military calculation. This is where their cooperation on defense and technology creates a much, much tougher security challenge for the West. Look, it's really important to get this straight. This is not some romantic alliance built on shared values or a common culture. Not at all. The sources are absolutely clear. This is a hard calculation. It's a purely pragmatic partnership born from cold, hard strategic interests and a shared view of who their enemies are. And a perfect example of this hard calculation in action is Russia selling the advanced S-300 missile defense system to Iran. And let me tell you, this is a huge deal, a real game changer. It basically gives Iran the ability to create a protective dome over its most critical sites, which makes any potential military strike way more difficult and way more costly. For Russia, it's a brilliant move to strengthen an ally and create a serious counterweight to Western power in the Middle East. So you have the energy play, you have the military tech, but what's the real glue holding this all together? Well, beyond all that, there's a really powerful shared motivation, creating a united front against Washington. Both Russia and Iran feel like they're being targeted by American foreign policy, and this alliance is their strategic answer. This quote from our source material really says it all. From their perspective, in Moscow and Tehran, they see American foreign policy as simply aggressive. They're framing this whole alliance as a defensive move, something they have to do to push back against what they see as a campaign to isolate and contain them. So what do? Their response is basically a two-part strategy. First, mutual self-defense, like the S-300 missile deal. And second, joint power projection. That just means working together to expand their influence into new places and challenge Western dominance in ways that neither country could really pull off on its own. Okay, so let's put it all together. You've got energy control, military cooperation, and a united front against Washington. What does all this actually mean for the West? Let's break it down to the key strategic risks that come out of this new reality. When you boil it all down, the risks really fall into two big buckets. First, European energy security is now facing a direct, coordinated threat from this new Russo-Iranian energy bloc. Second, we have a new military reality, where an Iran that's armed with advanced Russian tech is a much tougher nut to crack. And the thing is, these two things aren't separate issues. They're totally connected, and they fundamentally change the game. And that leaves us with the big question, right? Is this whole thing just a temporary pact of convenience? A fleeting alliance between two countries that are under pressure? Or are we actually watching the birth of a long-term, durable strategic partnership, one that's set to permanently change the balance of power across the entire region? Only time will tell. But whatever the answer is, you can bet it's going to have huge consequences for all of us.